Trial Lawyers University, where the Titans come to train. Produced and powered by LawPods.
Well, we got Mohamad Ahmad here all the way from Palestine via LA, or LA via Palestine, one or the other. But Mohamad and I have been friends for quite some time. I think you reminded me the first time you ever came out to TLU was San Francisco, case analysis with Chris Dolan. I think the date was May 31st, 2019, if I'm not mistaken. I just remember it was the first time I ever did that program, which eventually evolved into the webinars during the pandemic. So appreciate your early support there, Mohamad, because we didn't know each other back then, but we got to know each other a little bit since then, which is an understatement.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Pleasure
sir.
to be
Mo was
here,
like,
Dan.
is that a question? Yes, Mo.
Dan the man, Psycho Dan Ambrose.
Mo, what's your memory of us meeting?
Well, at the case analysis,
Yeah.
and you were yelling at everybody. You're yelling.
Well, were you doing something that deserved to be yelling at? Like,
No, I was helpful. I fixed the PowerPoint that went like 3 hours over.
that's because
I was the one that raised my hand. I was like, guys, he's only on slide like 19 of like 633. And everyone's like, holy shit. And then Chris was like, I got a plane to catch. I got to go to Columbia or something. I don't know where Chris was going.
I remember it because he was doing some charitable thing there, but I think it went late till like 7 o'clock. It was crazy. It seemed like it never ended.
Yeah, and Chris, you got to give it to him because he has complex regional pain syndrome, but he powered through that like a champion.
Oh, no.
He did like 6 hours straight and was like answering questions. Nobody gave him a break because that break, everybody wanted to ask him 5,000 questions. So that guy's one of the OGs.
That's what I say. Chris Dolan will always be an OG at TLU. But this is the Mohamad Ahmad journey. So, because Mo, you're the first person with a higher degree out of the 7 kids in your family or your parents, first person to go to college, only person to go to college, first and only. But beyond that, though, you eventually not just went to college, but to law school. So where'd you get the big idea to go to law school?
The big idea was from my friends that were in undergrad, and they were doing their summer clerkships while they were in law school. I met them in undergrad, and then they went on to law school while I was still in undergrad. I didn't fail undergrad, like totally. So it's not like I was staying back, like repeating years or anything like that, but they were just older than me. And they would hang out during the summer, and they were making like $3,000 a week. So I was like, I want to make that kind of money. And so these big firms would wine and dine you and do all that stuff. So I was like, all right, I'm going to be a big firm lawyer for a few years and just suck them dry and then become a plaintiff's lawyer.
Is that because while you were in college and beforehand, what kind of work did you do to really help you prepare for this plaintiff's lawyer thing?
Oh, I worked in my dad's indoor swap meet in Coachella, selling clothes to hardworking farm workers. So I always had a soft spot in my heart for especially migrant workers that like toiled in the 100-degree heat to pick grapes and stuff like that. So that's where I kind of got my connection to normal people. I grew up around farm workers. Yeah, I grew up in La Quinta, but nights and weekends I would spend in my dad's swap meet. We basically saw like one white person a year and one black person a year. It was all Mexicans. The rest of it.
Is this where you learned to speak a little Spanish?
A little bit of Spanish, a little bit of conversational Spanish. And so it's not proper Spanish, but it's conversant, So that's how I got my connection to the La Raza, the homies. So
and so you go to law school and you're all primed for your big law job coming out. Where'd you go to law school?
UCLA.
That's a pretty prestigious law school. Not too many people that want to become plaintiffs lawyers typically go to UCLA, do they? That's more of a big law kind of place like Michigan.
Yeah, so I started off at UC Davis Law for 1 year. Fortunately, I did well there, and I was able to transfer to UCLA Law. And my goal was to work in corporate law for like 2 or 3 years, because they say that like for the first 3 years, they pay you and they don't benefit from you. So I was like, all right, I'll go take your money for 3 years. And then I'm going to be a plaintiff's lawyer. I always had in my mind I was going to be a plaintiff's lawyer. My dad's cousin was a plaintiff's lawyer in Georgia. I just had that mindset, like, I'd rather be helping people than defending clients that I couldn't choose. You know, I'm always big about case selection, and you don't have that luxury as a defense lawyer.
Or working in some big law firm either.
Yeah.
So did that dream work out for you, buddy? Did you get your blue chip job?
The first part of the dream did not work out. So I clerked at a law firm, and then they no offered me. This was 2009. I was a 2L. At the end of my 2L year, I clerked at a law firm, and then they no offered me during the Great Recession. So
December 15th through 22nd, we're going to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. We'll be staying at the Pueblo Bonito Resort, Sunset Beach. We're going to be golfing, playing pickleball, and training about 6 hours a day, working on our cases. I am super stoked about this one. And so if you're interested in coming, you can be part of it all. We got about 21 people coming right now. It's probably going to be about around that size. So it's going to be an amazing way to spend the last quote unquote regular week before the holidays. All right, back to you were just saying how the first part worked out, but not the second part.
the first part did not work out. The second part did. Starting my own firm did. But the first part was working at a big law firm for 3 years. I got no offered after I clerked in the summer. I got no offered at the end of the summer of 2009. And so I graduated 2010 with no job, and I just started my own firm.
Did you apply anywhere else?
I applied only to big law firms, and because my theory was like, I'm either going to work at a place where they're going to pay me a lot of money and I'm going to, you know, learn something, or I'm going to start my own firm. I'm not going to get work at a small law firm where I'm doing all the work and then, you know, not getting the reward. So I started my own thing right off the bat.
How'd you go about figuring out everything you had to do between, office? I mean, there's so. I mean, I know it's like it seems like there's so much to do to start your own law firm right out of the gate, especially when you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah, you just start one step at a time, and then straight out of law school, I ended up doing a trial. It was a restraining order trial, and the the person that filed the restraining order, her dad was super rich, and so he hired this like white shoe law firm out of San Francisco. And so restraining order trials are very informal, but you could have fooled that courtroom because they came in, did a serious trial, and fortunately it was my friend's life on the line, so I prepared seriously for it too. And he was like a 20-year trial lawyer, and I defeated him, so that kind of gave me a false sense of confidence, like that I could do this. So we won that trial. And then I remember a few years later, we had another one of those trials where I was helping a friend. I show up and I had a brief and everything. The judge was like, "What are you doing? This is way too formal for these proceedings." And my only experience was that prior case where the rich dad was making it like a full blown trial, you know.
So you get out, you start your own firm, and what'd you call it? What was the name of your firm?
Valor LLP. And so valor, courage, honor. It means the same thing in English and Spanish. And since I worked in Indio, my first office was in Indio. I got an office in Indio right next to the courthouse. That that word has the same meaning in both languages. And so I was Valor Legal or Valor LLP.
How'd you hook up with your partner, Ray?
So Ray and I have went to UCLA together as undergrad and law school. And I would Ray was like my mentor, so I would just call him for advice, and Ray just has like unbridled confidence in every situation. He's like, you just go show up and you throw down. Like that was his advice. You show up and you throw down. I was like, Ray, I gotta. So I ended up having this. My friend's DUI lawyer dropped him right before trial, and so my friend's like, you got to jump in to do the DUI trial, and I've never done any trials, let alone jury trials. And so I call Ray. Ray's like, you just show up and throw down. So I was like, all right. So I took the gig based on that, misguided confidence.
So you go and do this DUI trial. What was that like for you?
Oh, that was a whirlwind. But it was around the time where the DA was like cracking down on DUIs in Riverside County. That DA later got convicted himself of like political something because he was like knocking down opponent signs during the election. But that DA was big anti-DUI guy, so he insisted on jail time for my client. So one of my best friends. So my best friend's like, I don't want to go to jail. So I told the judge, like, we got to go to trial. And then he ended up getting convicted, but no jail time. So
All right. A
it was
mini
like
victory.
a
I'm
mini
like,
victory. Yeah.
you went and
It
won
was
your
his
first,
fault. It was 100% his fault that he got convicted.
of
He,
course.
he
That's what I
no,
always say when they,
he got up there and he said, I said, so we were able to frame it in a way that he didn't lie to the police, and that was actually the truth. He didn't lie to the policeman. The policeman kind of rushed to judgment, and as soon as he found out he had one drink, he got him out and kind of made his mind up. And so the jury even picked up on that because we made it a theme of the trial. The jury asked the question saying, like, did the policeman ever ask you again if you had anything beyond the one drink that you initially told him you had at 11? I had a drink at 11 p.m. and the stop was at 2 a.m. So my friend said, yeah, I had a drink at 11 p.m. The cop like yanked him out of the car. And so we said that he didn't even give the guy an opportunity to explain himself or explain anything else. And the jury picked up on it. They actually asked the question of the cop because I wasn't going to ask the cop. I was just going to bring it up with my friend. Did you ever ask him, hey, did you have anything else after 11, like closer to 2 a.m.? Because our theory was he had another drink closer to 2, and that's what popped
of
the
course, that's what just made
breathalyzer,
it.
right?
Wasn't the half a dozen shots that he drank.
He didn't actually have that many drinks or whatever.
Yeah,
So,
I know. I defended a lot of DUIs that most of them had 2 drinks, maybe 3 at the most.
yeah. And so the cop said, no, I don't remember asking him. So then I asked my client, I was like, hey, after the cop asked you about the one drink, did he ever ask you again? Or did he just, book you or whatever? And he go, yeah, he did ask me. And I was like, okay, and what did you tell him? He's like, I lied. And I was just like, what it was like the reverse Perry Mason moment, dude. You're just like that really I couldn't put on a poker face for that one.
Well,
I was like,
maybe you should have asked him that question before he got on the stand, Mohammed.
we asked him like 35 times. We prepared that left, up, and right now. But I had good trial lawyer instincts because he called me, he was like, hey, my friend Kyle wants to testify. And I said, okay. And I said, all right, let me talk to Kyle. So I get on the phone with Kyle, and Kyle answers the phone like this: hello? And I didn't say anything else. I just gave him back the phone. I said, this motherfucker's not testifying. He's like, why? He's a good witness. I then go back into court, and the DA is like, hey, are you planning to call Kyle? Because we did a check on him. He's like, got like felonies for this and this and that. I go, no, we're not calling him. Don't worry.
All right, so you go and
So,
lose your DUI trial. So
yeah.
how do you get into the
So
so
then I
you
called Ray after that, and Ray kind of helped. I had a public defender friend that helped me like with the nuts and bolts of that trial. But Ray would help me with the confidence because it's terrifying to go in to a courtroom you don't know. And so afterwards, I called Ray for another case to help me out. He said, "Okay, I'll help you," and he was helping me with that case. And then that client ended up. It was a civil case against the government, but then the client in his criminal case pled guilty and did all this other stuff. So we dropped that case. And then Ray's like, hey, we work good together. Let's just work on other cases. So Ray brought me in on his jury trials, which is landlord tenant jury trials. And Ray like owned the courthouse in downtown LA. Like every judge, everybody knew him. And he kind of took me under his wing and taught me how to do trials.
so you eventually start doing civil jury trials, and when do you get your first 7-figure verdict?
That was in 2013 in Georgia on a case that I was brought into. I wasn't licensed in Georgia at the time, but my friend worked for my dad's cousin out there, and then my friend took the case that they were going to settle for like $45,000, and we tried it, and I got a $1.5 million verdict, $1.57 million verdict. So that was my first 7-figure verdict, 2013. Still like a relatively baby lawyer.
So that must have been pretty exciting. You probably thought this, hey, this is pretty easy. I mean, a baby lawyer get 1.75 million. I mean, I don't know what your cut was, but even just a little bit was a lot more than it seemed like you were making. You
Yeah,
know?
no, that month I actually got engaged, and that month our firm brought in the most, we brought in six figures just in that month alone. So it was the blessing of getting engaged to my now wife, Dina. So props to Dina for that.
That's what did it. And so, but then you were on a long drought until I think it was really until we crossed paths because you didn't have another seven-figure personal injury verdict. You got something that's some type of business case. We don't count those. But then you went right from your one seven-figure verdict with like about a 10-year drought. And then in 2023, is that when you tried the Maggio case?
Yeah. So it was about 10 years before I did another a big personal injury trial. Between that 2013 and then I was doing business cases. We defended like $1 billion in claims against the biggest health insurance companies across the country. So I was all over the country going to different federal courthouses. And that'll make you appreciate California and Georgia, going to these, we're like in random towns with like the hospital will have like 5 beds, and you're in that federal courthouse where like everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows everybody except for
Except
you.
you.
You stick out, especially you stick out if your name's John. So my name's Mohamad, and I'm it's like,
I'm here. Welcome.
hi
All right.
everybody.
So let's talk.
So,
Let's talk about the Maggio case because
all
that was
right,
your
the
it was your
Maggio,
big
the
moment,
Maggio
and
monster.
also because it's funny that you brought up confidence. That Ray gave you the confidence because I think confidence is is such a thing that's hard to put your thumb on. And how do you go about getting it? Because I just finished a boot camp this week, and a couple of the guys that were in it were here last Monday. A little bit earlier, we're just sitting out on my balcony, and I'm like, why are you guys here? What brought you here? And the one guy, he's a new lawyer, maybe 8 months. He's like, and he was a former professional basketball player too in Europe. So he's a big, tall guy, maybe like 6'8". And he's like, confidence, man. He's like, I'm just so insecure about my abilities and talking in front of people. And the other guy's face lit. He goes, that's what I was going to say too. And so it's such a big thing and it takes a long time, but I think that's the biggest difference between the people that I see that are, I call it maybe that we all consider to be like the quote unquote the champions of the courtroom. They get verdict after verdict with like seemingly like minimal preparation, whereas like, I mean, God, I know how much work you did preparing this case, but you know, like it's such a different world when you have confidence about the level. I think even the level of work you need to do in preparing, or it's kind of a chicken and the egg, the horse and carriage, what came first, the winning or the confidence, right? Because I know in this trial itself, you had, sometimes bouts of confidence because you initially didn't have the confidence to be the trial lawyer in this case.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I think it comes with, I think fear of the unknown is what confidence is all about. It's fear. And so for me in this case, the Maggio case, it was in Monterey County, which is a conservative county. And, it was me and Ray. And so I was clashing with the judge. We had like 19 expert depositions and we had about 10 hours of court hearings leading up to the Monday before trial. So the week before trial, we had 19 expert depositions and about 10 hours of courtroom hearings. And the judge had to rule on 3,000 pages of deposition designations because we took 50 video depositions and I designated about 30 or 40 of them. And so the judge actually, I was like, there's no way he's going to be able to go through all this because the defense waited. I designated everything months in advance, like you said, preparation. And I thought the judge would just overrule their objections. And then they filed their objections like basically 10 days before trial. And the judge, I was like, there's no way a judge can go through 3,000 pages. I can't even do that. But this judge actually powered through it and went through 3,000 pages. So I said, if he doesn't go through all the transcripts, and I'm going to show up and basically have to do this trial basically blind and redo the whole trial. So I didn't have that confidence. I was like, look, I've been preparing this case. So I brought in, another mentor, like trial legend, to talk to the judge because he's an older white guy. He's like 50-something-year-old white guy, Joey Lowe. And I was like, all right, he'll vibe with the judge. And on that, I was right. The judge loved Joey Lowe. Like everybody loves Joey Lowe, but the judge definitely loved him. And the judge was very disappointed when Joey Lowe had to get a continuance and then bow out of the case. So, and the judge was stuck with me, but it worked out.
Eric Oliver is coming to Las Vegas October 28th through November 1st for a 5-day case story boot camp. So Eric will be working with you on developing your case as a story. Basically, he will be your trial consultant on your case. And then myself and my team will be working with you on your presentation skills, your voir dire, your witness preparation and direct examination, and your cross-examination skills. So at the end of the program, you'll both be a much better storyteller and, just as importantly, maybe more importantly, telling the right story. So join us in Vegas. Right, but you didn't, find another older white guy to come help you. And
Yeah.
obviously, I don't fall into that category due to my youthfulness, so couldn't qualify into that category. I appreciate that. But you didn't go and get anybody else to help you. You decided that, how did you come to the decision, hey, you know what? Once there was a mistrial, I got to be the one to try this case, not somebody else, not Joey Lowe, not Rex Paris, not Brian Panish, nobody but Mohamad Ahmad.
Yeah, by then the judge actually ruled on the depots and everything like that, and everything was going to be more streamlined. And also just the connection that I had with the client, that I believe this was a $50 million case. And, for all these other lawyers, they have like dozens and thousands of other cases, right? So I was connected to this case, so I said, okay, I'm gonna show the judge who told me that there's no way you're ever going to get more than $4 million in my courtroom. And I'm going to show everybody that, this is a righteous case. And so I believed in the case more than I think anybody else did. And so that's why I said, okay, I'll just do it myself. And I didn't want it to get continued again or anything like that. When
Right.
you're in the driver's seat, you can determine, when the trial goes forward. And this was an independent judge. So we had a trial date, and this judge, starts voir dire first day of trial. So I knew that he was going to do that from our first run when we got a mistrial because of COVID or whatnot. But so for this second trial in May of 2023, I knew we were going to go. So that's kind of what gave me the confidence to do it. It was more streamlined.
Mm-hmm. And by the time you got to trial, how much had you spent on experts and costs and everything getting ready for this trial?
About $1 million. Yeah.
Right. And that wasn't from a funding company. That
Yeah.
was your own money.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of belief right there. That's a lot of belief right there.
Yeah.
And then you also
Anybody that,
hired, but you had a lot of people you called in, basically everybody that you thought was great. I mean, so tell us about some of the things you did to prepare for this, way before you brought anybody in to help, but things that you were doing because you saw the value of the case to get it ready to be teed up for trial.
well, I've never seen a village raise a child, so I don't know if that old saying is accurate, but it took a village to win this verdict. And so we used the whole village for this verdict. So obviously starting with Ray was like, look, take this all the way. I believe in you. And so Ray invested his, obviously money, and then also his belief in the case. And he was the one pushing me, you got to try this case and take it all the way to trial. They're undervaluing you. They're undervaluing the case, and they're underestimating you. So Ray helped a lot with that. And then at trial, Ray basically took care of all of the briefs, the motion writing, the jury instructions, all that stuff. And this judge is very thorough. So that actually, sometimes that benefited us, but it also hurts you because then you have to write like 30 motions and briefs and everything like that. So Ray kind of took the labor and ore on that. And then we did a bunch of focus groups, maybe 10 focus groups. And then we did 2 sets of big data with the John Campbell. I had work days with Jordan Logan and Sean Claggett in Vegas. And then I went up to Vegas for TLU with you, and you were gracious enough to do the witness prep for Kelly and Kirsty. And those were obviously the 2 most important witnesses at the trial. And we used that witness prep to guide our focus groups, to also change our strategy with respect to Kirsty. And that's what taught me that I shouldn't do Kirsty, because when I interviewed Kirsty, there was just like a disconnect, even though, we love each other and everything like that, but there was just a disconnect because I wasn't really connecting to the emotional side of the Kelly Kirsty thing. And I remember you connected with it. with them at the hospital kissing and all that stuff. And for me, that didn't move me. So I wasn't connected to her in the same way that, my associate Jason Doucette, who eventually did the thing. But we wouldn't have known that if we didn't prep. And so we did that with you, and then we used that in her deposition. So I
But you
think that
also
was like
had
2 days of
Cliff
prep.
Atkinson.
Yeah, then we got Cliff Atkinson, who Mark Lanier uses for PowerPoints. He helped us drill down on the PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint was just 3 simple themes, and we kind of stuck with that theme. We stuck with that theme for the PowerPoint, and we stuck with that theme for trial. So I brought him out here. I think he's in New York, and he flew out here, and you were there for that too. So that was very helpful. We all sat in the room in Ray's office, and we just powered through a PowerPoint. And what's interesting is the PowerPoint was very simple, but that's kind of, it's like, I forget who said it, but if I had more time, I'd write a shorter letter. So sometimes by spending more time, you come up with a more refined, shorter product. So that's what we did. Then for the neuropsych and the pain management guy, because the pain management guy was Dr. Prager, we had Dorothy Clay Sims, and she is a she bothered them so much that they eventually didn't even show up to trial. Like, so her work was instrumental.
What do you mean they didn't show up? Prager didn't show up for trial?
Prager and the neuropsych, Anthony Strickland, did not show up to testify at trial. They withdrew them. So at the last second. So they're lucky they did. I was about to destroy them. I'm kidding.
Of course you were.
I'm
They got
kidding.
lucky. So
I was
you
not looking
sort of
forward to those two.
neutralized them, but you and I, we did a fair amount of work on this with some of the focus groups, and you did my boot camp, I think twice.
Yeah.
Um,
And I went to all the TRU conferences.
what did you get from like the skills training at boot camp that really helped you kind of in this trial?
The biggest thing that we did with, especially with Kelly and Kirsty, and also in training, is videotaping what we did. So we recorded the Zoom when we did that. And it's weird when you see yourself. Obviously, I think everybody, when they hear their own voice, they get upset. They're like, "This sucks," me especially. But also when you see yourself, it's even worse. Right? So it's even worse than hearing yourself. And so just seeing myself, how I was rushing through things, and nobody knows the case like you do. So when you know something, you kind of rush through it. And so the skills boot camps help me kind of slow down and just look, just relax. Dude, no, nobody's chasing you. Just relax. And that's easier said than done. But with practice, and video recording yourself, because you're like, dude, I don't want to see myself look like an idiot. So you record yourself, and it's very uncomfortable. But just getting comfortable being uncomfortable, I guess, would be the number one thing from that.
How about your eye contact?
Yeah,
Working on your eye contact.
and that's what I'm talking about. When you speed up, you kind of start your eyes start darting. You start looking everywhere. You look like a creeper, but you don't notice that. You don't notice that until you see it on video. You're like, dude, why am I moving around like this? And then also the benefit is you see other people, and you're like, okay, this is how it looks when I'm up there. And so you're more, it's kind of like just beating it into your head. Like, look, this is what it looks like, the wrong way to do it. This is the way it looks like, the right way to do it. And seeing you be able to kind of do it in a calm way. I remember when you would do it, you would be like so calm, and you're not a calm person. I literally have you saved in my phone as Psycho Dan Ambrose, but you kind of have like a little switch where you just slow down. And so I'm like, if Dan can make that transition, then anybody can. you know.
So I'm like, when I'm teaching the boot camp, I'm like, Joe, do you understand? Like, Mohamad, do you understand? Like, yeah. I'm like, okay, I don't need to ask anybody else. If Bo gets it, I know everybody gets it. So you always go to the slowest person in the room. Make sure they got it. You don't have to talk to everybody else. I appreciate that. That's right. If I can do it, or somebody you think has no abilities at all, and they're like, it's like there's this quote from The Bear from my buddy Kurt Zane lives at Anthony Hopkins movie. He goes, "What one man can do, another can do." Right. And so you see somebody do it, and you say, man, that person's no better than I am. They're no smarter than I am. They're no more anything than I am. If they can do it, I can do it too. Right. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of, part of it. Depositions Are Trial with Satch Oliver. in Rogers, Arkansas, March 3rd through 7th, 2026. You'll be working in depth with Satch and his team on your deposition skills, and they'll be working with myself and my coaches on your trial performance skills. That means witness prep and direct, cross-examination, voir dire, and performance skills. It's going to be a great group. It's going to be small. It's limited to 15 participants. Hope you can make it to Rogers, Arkansas. So what was this Maggio case? Tell us what this case was about.
So our client was working at a large solar power plant in the Paso Robles area, about 3 hours north of LA. And he was doing basically the final check on the transformer. And so the transformer takes all the power from the solar panels. There's all these little boxes that combine the energy from all those thousands of solar panels, and they shoot them to the transformer. And then the transformer transforms them from DC to AC, so we can use it in our homes, the power at our homes. And while he was on there, it was supposed to be off. Everybody agreed the power should be off. Somebody turned on the power and lit him up, And so he had like his arm was on fire, it like melted onto the transformer, and his coworker, it's like a hero, saved him from the transformer. And then he got airlifted via helicopter to a burn center. And thankfully for him, he had two of the best trauma surgeons in the country happened to be working in that hospital during that time. And if the incident would have happened today, they wouldn't be there today. They're both of those surgeons are in different places now. So I think one retired and one is doing like children's burn injuries in like Louisiana. So he got very, very lucky. They saved his arm. They saved his life. And then he ultimately recovered and went back to work and got promoted and made more money after the incident than before.
What kind of injuries did he sustain?
So he had the obvious injury was the burn injury on his forearm. He had a huge burn and scar there. And then and that was agreed upon. And then everything else was disputed. So we believed he had a heart injury, brain injury, and complex regional pain syndrome. And so that was all the dispute. So they wanted to pay like 3 to 5 million. And, obviously we wanted 50 million. So
you weren't on the same page.
now we had a little disagreement. They forgot a zero, and we weren't happy about that.
Well, it seemed like the judge was more on their page than your page, it seemed like.
He was, yeah. Although after the first trial, the judge kind of came around. He said, because he read everything. Like I said, he read 3,000 pages of transcript, and he was like, you know what, Mr. Ahmad, I think this case is worth $12 million, which the highest verdict in the history of that county was a 19-year-old girl that got paralyzed by a Toyota car, a truck or whatever. And so Toyota was the defendant. She was the plaintiff, and she was like, according to everybody, like the biggest sweetheart in the world. And she got an $11.4 million verdict. And I believe there was some comparative too. Or some other person was at fault. So it ended up being under 11 million, I believe, the final verdict. And so he was like, dude, this guy is like, he got hurt, but he's back to work. He's making more money, and he's 50 years old. Like this and the 19-year-old case are in two different universes. So he's like, she got 11 million. Your client shouldn't get that much. But after the first mistrial, once he read everything, he's like, you know what? I could see why you think this is a $12 million case, and that's what I'll recommend. So he recommended 12, but apparently he never communicated that to the defense. So they never came above like 6 million or something.
Got it. So this case that you thought was a $50 million case that you and Ray believed in, but you're having a tough time convincing the judge and the defense attorney. But what, pre-trial strategy-wise, did you waive any of your economics?
Yes. And so, we didn't waive it pre-trial, we waived it at trial. And the reason we kept it in was because the judge was not believing in the case. And so to kind of bolster the case in the eyes of the defense and the judge, we kept in the economics, because you know how insurance companies are, they're all about economics. And so we kept it in. It was about $5 million in lost wages. And the way it happened is we did a focus group. We actually ran a big data on it. So my client was like, "Look, dude, I'm losing my mind. I they're gonna make me 100% disabled, and I could not work, and nobody will bother me. And I don't know if I'm physically capable of returning to work, but I'm losing my mind. So what should I do?" And I said, "Go back to work." Like, he said, "What about the case?" I said, "Don't worry about the case. Who gives a shit about the case? Go back to work. If you're gonna lose your mind, it's not worth it. Go back to work." And I said, "Just to make you feel better, I'll run data, a focus group, to see what happens with the verdict if we lose out on $5 million in economic wages," right? Because he was worried that he was going to go back to work and only last like a few months, and then he'd have to quit again. And even today, he still works for his mental clarity, but it's like every day is like a struggle. He's been hospitalized multiple times post verdict because he just can't work anymore physically, but he just does it, so he's not just sitting home all day doing nothing. So we ran data, and the data supported a high verdict even without the lost wages. And so that gave us the confidence to be like, go back to work, do what's best for you. And so when we got to trial, we said we're waiving all future economic damages and past, actually. We waived all past economic damages related to his work and related to his medical bills. And we waived all future wages. And so the only thing that we had for economics on the whole verdict was $2.3 million in future medical. And we asked for 2.7. So the jury gave us 2.3 out of 2.7 on medicals. The rest was pain and suffering.
And so you're approaching this case without, with a person who's not just back to work, but actually making more money than they were before, and limited appearance difference, right? I mean, limited. I mean, I know he lost a lot of muscle mass, but it wasn't like he was sitting in, the courtroom without a t-shirt on, right? And he's still a massive human being, whether with the muscle mass, without the muscle mass. So in voir dire, like, how'd you talk about this, like in the mini opening when it was the Mohamad Ahmad show, when you were you did, so how'd you talk about basically starting the frame out in the mini opening?
Yeah, so I was I actually read the mini opening again today. I was very clinical with it. I just said, this is what happened. His arm melted onto the transformer. He got life flighted out of there so they can understand the gravity of the situation. And I said, he has injuries to his brain, his heart, his arm, and they're disputing that, and they're blaming him and his employer mainly for these injuries. We're going to get to that later. We're not going to discuss that now, but that's just something to discuss. And um, and then the total claim is going to be 46 million, including $3 million in medical.
But it went up to, but how did you go from that? Because you told me your ask for the jury was around 50 before. So how did
Yeah,
you go about elevating it from your initial, mini opening?
yeah. So for loss of consortium, so we asked for 46 million for Kelly and 8 million for Kirsty, his wife. And
Got it.
so that's how we explained the difference between 46 and 54. And they awarded 51.3.
All right. So they got close enough. Close enough. So
We're
when it
okay
was
with it.
jury selection, what was like when you first stand up there? What do you do when you first to get your connection with that jury?
So the first thing I did was I based it on what they said, where they said they worked. And so the first guy I went after, I actually read the transcript again today. The first guy I went after was a guy that talked about he worked around explosives and so high danger work. And so I asked him, "Hey, does anyone ever get injured?" And he said, "Yeah, and it's usually their fault." Right. So that was kind of my theme. Okay, sitting here today, does everyone just think Kelly must have done something wrong? Nope, nobody gets injured unless it's their own fault. Especially in a case like this where it's a premises liability type case. So that's what I started with is where do you work? I took where people worked, and then safety was part of their job. I focused on them.
TLU Huntington Beach is going to be the greatest event of 2026. There's going to be 4 lecture tracks, 8 workshop tracks with the top trial lawyers in the country. on Tuesday, June 2nd, there's going to be a golf outing, pickleball outing. That night, we're going to have a dinner at the La Rea. We're going to buy it out. Everybody gets a chance to meet each other beforehand. And then during the conference, of course, we do a full breakfast, full lunch, and theme parties every night. This year, we're going to be utilizing the pool area and the restaurant for more of the parties. And we're going to have an adult swim right one night, a Satch Oliver party on Friday night. And the last theme party is going to be a 80s Run DMC Adidas jumpsuit. It's going to be the greatest. And last year we had over 800 people. This year it's going to be over 1,000. So if you want to be part of it all and you want to stay at the Paseo Hotel, don't delay because it sells out fast and then you're going to be in the overflow. Can't wait to see you there. TLU Beach. And how did you talk about the comparative fault aspect of this at all in voir dire?
Yeah. So that's basically what I talked about. I said, without hearing any facts or anything, do you think it's got to be his fault? And some of them were like, yeah, he must have done something wrong. And so we just explored that. Okay, tell me more. You haven't heard anything. Okay. And then the people that we kept on were like the ones that said, look, I haven't heard anything. It could have been his fault, it could have been someone else's fault. And I said, okay, when we show you the facts, are you gonna be open to those facts?
And
I said, yeah.
and what would you say is your most memorable moment of jury selection?
Okay, yeah, that's a very definitive moment in jury selection. So what ended up happening is I was talking to this guy, and he was like cagey with me, and it was kind of like, look, dude, he kind of had this attitude like, look, man, I don't want to be here. This is kind of a scam. You're scamming me. He's scamming me. Everyone's a scam. This is all like a money grab type thing. But it wasn't necessarily directed just at me. It was directed at the whole process. So I was trying to ask him questions about, because jurors brought up like how they were against the wife and all that stuff. So by that time, we started talking about non-economic damages, things you value that are not, that you can't put a number on. And so this guy was kind of answering questions, but then kind of being like, yeah, what, of course I love my family. What, very cagey, very combative. And then at one point he's like, look, dude, what you're trying to do is just get somebody that's going to lean on your side. And what they're trying to do is going to get somebody to lean on their side. Good luck with that. And, and so I started off with the joke, I was like, are you going to lean on my side? And he's like, I was like, no, I'm just kidding. Don't answer that. I said, look, you bring up a good point here. We're all in it to win it kind of thing. I was like, and I've even heard trial lawyers, because I did hear a defense lawyer one time say, oh, I wish my family was on the jury. And I said, but the reality is the system would break down if that was the case. If we had biased jurors on, it would break down. I was like, so for this to work, we really need each side to be impartial. You can't be in favor of Kelly. You can't be in favor of them. I said, that's really what we're doing here. We're trying to get to the impartial juror. And it's a very hard process. And that's really what we're doing. We're not trying to get you to lean either way. Can you work with me? And then he totally just like turned off his combative nature. And the next thing he said was something like, yeah, okay, cool. I get that. And he's like, well, speaking of damages, this is priceless, right? So why 46 million? Why not 100 million? And I
It's
was
a
like,
valid point.
good point. I was like, Your Honor, we accept this juror.
100's good. But
No. So that was the breaking point. And then I started talking to him about his family. And then like Rex Paris does this thing about diamonds in your life. And so when he was struggling to answer that question about what he cherishes about his family, he's like, what do you mean, what do I cherish? I was like, for me, I don't like soccer myself. I don't play soccer, but there's nothing I love more than seeing my kids get excited to play soccer. They get excited for soccer, and so I just love seeing that. That's a diamond in my life when they get ready for soccer. And that opened him up. He started talking about his daughters and his grandkids and how he spoils them and whatnot. So that was a pivotal moment in jury selection.
got a little bit of a connection going there, did you, Mo?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Because then
commonality.
it was just two people talking, right?
And so Sonia Chopra was your trial consultant
Yeah.
in this case. So tell us about working with Sonia and how you found that to be, you know, I guess beneficial to getting the jury you got.
Yeah, I mean, it was, yeah, Sonia Chopra and then John Joyce from the Jerry Spence method. So John Joyce helped me out. And so having them there, and then obviously Ray was there, Jason. So I had a whole army there, but Sonia was just feeding me questions, and I think it kind of it helped because it was almost like she was kind of helping me. And so the jury was kind of like, oh, he's we're not going to blame him for any questions. We're kind of like looking at Sonia as feeding him the questions. He's just like the mouthpiece. So he's almost just like the messenger. And so that actually kind of helped because they could see that I was just like looking at it and asking questions that she was asking. And to have one of the best trial consultants or jury selectors asking the questions helped a lot. So she asked a bunch of questions, and she did not like when I got into the feelings and all that stuff. She was just like, you could tell I, she worked hard on that trial, because she had to overcome me. It's not easy.
Yeah, you're a lot to deal with, Mo. I can understand that. I've had to deal with you myself for all these years, so I totally get where Sonia's coming from. Yeah, because she does all of like the Brian Panish's and Rahul's work and their firm's work, and they're very busy getting big verdicts and so because she wasn't there for the first time that when Joey was doing it, is that correct? And
Correct.
then you managed
Correct.
to bring her on for the redo.
Yeah, in May. Yeah, I don't think she was available in February, so then she came out in May.
Yes, that worked out pretty good. That worked out pretty good. As far as like when it comes to sequencing these witnesses, 'cause you had what, like 40 witnesses. You had a massive number of witness. How many witnesses your side call?
Yeah, we called about over 30 witnesses.
So when it came to sequencing them and dividing them up, I mean, how did you think about that? I mean, it's just so much information.
Yeah, so the way we did it was we focused on the defense first, the getting out the liability story first, and then we did damages, and then we did sorry, we did defense first, then we did the injuries, and then we did the damage.
So when
So
you say defense, you did the liability portion, like to prove your
correct.
case. So that way it's just a matter of
We played the defense video depots that we had, and if we didn't have the video depots, because sometimes you don't, then we would have called the defense first at trial, and figuratively blown them up.
so which percentage of your witnesses were by video?
Over half. Yeah, because so in California, I forget what the CCP code is, but there's a section that says if the witness is more than 150 miles from the courthouse, then you can play their depot for any purpose at trial. And so they don't have to be a party, they don't have to be an unavailable doctor. And so we took advantage of that and we designated over 30 depositions. And we obviously played the defense, which you don't need permission to do that, but we played the defense witnesses and we played the plaintiff's damages witnesses. So we played a bunch of witnesses via video, and we would structure it in a way where it would be like perfect. So we would end on a high note. So Friday we ended with the burn surgeon. She was like the best witness of all time. And then the following Friday, we ended with his friend who was like this gruff, no BS type guy that was only like a 7-minute clip. But he ended up he that the depot ends with, you know, he can't do shit, because the guy's like, look, this guy was immortal beforehand, and now he can barely do anything. So yeah, he might have gone back to work and all that, but this guy was Superman, literally immortal beforehand. And he's like, so I can't even be around him. He's my best friend, but I can't be around him because he's not the same guy, and I just can't stand to see the decline. So even though he wasn't the most polished witness, so we ended the Friday on that. So we tried to end the week on a good note, and we did.
Good, obviously, because the results finally show. What were some of the highlights of the testimony from either side?
So that one was a highlight. He can't do shit. Kirsty, so Jason Doucette from our office, he did Kirsty Maggio. And one of the highlights after Kirsty was like the jurors, running into the hallway and calling their loved ones. That was, it was a very impactful witness. Kirsty was very impactful.
What do you think made her so impactful?
it was just raw testimony. I mean, they really have a an incredible life before the injury. And, after the injury, it's just been a roller coaster to say the least, but they're sticking it out together, and just the that there was beauty even in that tragedy, right? In that the way their optimism, And that was one of the things I was worried about is her optimism, because she kept not wanting to like manifest that his life would be a disaster going forward. And so I was just like, Kirsty, you got to explain to them the reality of what it is. He's nothing like what he was before. Don't be afraid to say that. And she's like, no, I don't want to, speak that into existence or whatever. So just they could see that she really didn't want to be the she didn't want to be in that situation. It wasn't like they were trying to milk it for money, that they would trade all the money in the world to get Kelly back. He was worth at least what the verdict was, if not more.
Lake Tahoe, February 8th through 15th. It'll be our 5th year in a row at the same location. We got it dialed in. We rent out the 7-bedroom house on the lake. We train for 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the evening, and ski all day. It's great fun, great learning. You're gonna work on your trial skills and on your case itself. So join us in Tahoe for the 5th annual TLU Ski Boot Camp. And how about any highlights from the defendant's witnesses, from any of their experts?
Yeah, so one of the highlights, and this is actually, I gave a lecture about this at TLU Beach, Huntington Beach, so you can watch that, my lecture on that.
On TLU On Demand, the library for
TLU on
trial.
demand, which is incredible. I used that, by the way, to prep for this case. So for electrical injury, there's like a Bible of electrical injury, and it's this like international committee. And it's kind of like the World Cup where you send representatives from every country to sit on this committee. And the Bible of electrical injury really hasn't changed in like 140 years. So this guy, this defense witness, he's a professor and he's very well credentialed, and he was their electrical expert, and he was hyping up the Bible and this and this and that. So then I start crossing him on his nonsense, and he starts saying, "Oh no, that's an error in the Bible. That's an error in the Bible." And so after like he said he's going to go back to the committee because I pointed out all these errors in their Bible, and they're going to change the Bible after 140 years of just like, So I was like, dude, come on, dude. I barely know math, and you're telling me that like some random lawyer is going to change like this committee that sits together and does all this. I was like, no, the Bible is right, and you're full of shit. So, so that was one of the highlights. The jury was laughing.
Oh, he was trying to point out how the Bible was wrong because he was right?
Yeah. So he relied on the Bible until, with the help of an expert and John Joyce, we went through the Bible, and the Bible actually supported what we were saying. And so every time I pointed that out to him, he'd be like, "Oh, that's actually an error. That's good you pointed that out. Oh, that's an error. I didn't notice that. Yeah, we got to fix that next time. We
Sounds like
got to
he was
fix that
pretty
next time." So
smooth rolling off your punches.
yeah, so he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna take notes on this, and we'll go back to the committee." So after like the 6th or 7th one, I was like, "Dude, come on!" And even the judge started laughing at some point. He was just like, "Dude." you know,
So did you say anything to that expert, to that before he got on the stand?
yeah. So we had a very contentious deposition. Very like it was the most combative deposition probably I've ever had. And so when I
So when
met
you
him
say
in
it's
person,
combative, what do you mean by that? Because
he was
when
yelling,
people
I
see
was
you,
yelling.
you're very low key, so they have trouble depicting you being combative.
Oh no, I'm like a crazy, but I almost got arrested in this case. So no, I'm very crazy sometimes, unfortunately, or fortunately. But yeah, so we were yelling back and forth, interrupting each other. The depot was supposed to last an hour. I took him over 2 hours. Like we're just, and I was, trying to call him out because I was getting frustrated that he was just saying stuff, and I couldn't really defeat him because he just started sending me articles in German and stuff like that. I'm like, I can't read German. This was before ChatGPT was really something, so I couldn't really like defeat him on that front. And so when you kind of feel powerless, you start getting crazy. But by the time trial rolled around, he was one of the 19 depositions, right? So obviously I didn't have time to prepare. like I wanted to for his depo. And then that actually helped me because at trial, I went
But
up
how
to
long
him
but how long did you prepare for his depo?
like 6 days. Oh, for his depo, like not that much because we got the file like basically the same day. And it was just, what are your opinions? But as he was giving the opinions, they were so like ridiculous that I started trying to argue with him and trying to learn the stuff on the spot. And so once we got to trial, I prepared for like 6 days just for him. And I read all his articles. His articles supported me. So he started disavowing his articles and saying those aren't the good ones, and you need to read these other articles, and disavowing the Bible. And but before he testified, I went up to him and I said, "Hey, Mr. Kroll, I'm Mohammed." He said, "Oh, Mohammed, nice to meet you. That was a tough depo." And I said, "The depo is nothing compared to what I'm going to do to you inside there." And at that point, I was just bluffing. Like, I didn't really know that I was going to destroy him. And he like, "Oh, ha, ha, ha." And then I walk away and I turn around. I go, "Nothing compared to what I'm going to do to you in there." And he was like, like, what the hell? This guy's serious. And I just walked away. And I did that honestly just for my own amusement. Like, I wasn't trying to psych him out or anything like that. I was just like, let me just mess with the guy right now.
Yeah, very entertaining, Mohammed, messing with a guy like that.
Yeah.
Messing with a guy like that. So you get to closing. How did you think about and articulate? I know you gave the jury the number beforehand, but how did you go about showing? Because oftentimes lawyers just get a feeling about a number. Or what did the big data come back at? Did that help
Yeah.
instruct
The,
your
the,
number?
the, the big data came back at between 46 and 54 million.
So it was no coincidence that
Yeah. It was no coincidence. That's what, with the Campbell big data. And so that's what I was, and I believed in the number too. I really believed in it. Once you get to know Kelly, you really believe like given a chance, he would turn down 50 million in a heartbeat to get his life back. Because his life was, I mean, the guy was Superman. He would work. He lived in the desert, Palm Desert, which is where the Coachella concert, if no one's Palm Springs area, that's where he lived. So he's working 3 hours north of LA. He would work like 70, 80 hours Monday through Friday. Friday, he would leave the job site like 5 hours from his home, drive 5 hours to his home, load up his trailer, load up his boat, his trailer, and everything like that, drive it 3 hours to Lake Havasu, spend the weekend there. Sunday night, drive his family home back to Palm Desert, 3 hour drive, and then drive 5 hours to the job site and work. And the way he worked, everyone on the job site knew who he was, including everybody in the defense. So that's one of the things I asked every defense witness, "What do you know about Kelly?" And they said, "All I know is that he's a badass. Like I didn't work with him, but I heard about him. Like you heard about him, right?" So it would be like, the Brian Panish or
like
like Mark Lanier.
Muhammad Ahmad.
No, not the one. No.
Not yet. A few more years. I'd be like, this
Yeah.
Palestinian guy came from nowhere,
Yeah.
overcame all this bias, this Islamophobia bias that, you
Yeah.
know,
So everybody knew. So I knew in my heart that 50 million was nothing compared to what he suffered, right? And then the data obviously backed it up. I wouldn't have asked for that number if the data told me not to, right? Because you don't want to hurt your case. And so the data backed it up. And then we just went. So California has a jury instruction 3900 that says the award must include an amount for every harm suffered. And then 3905A has a list of all the harms that you can suffer. And I just told the jury, I said, "Look, here's a list of all the harms. This is the jury instruction you all read." I said, "They list all these harms out, but I don't think there's ever been a case where the plaintiff suffered every single one of them." And I was like, "This is this case." And I went through each item, pain, mental suffering, emotional distress, disfigurement, loss of enjoyment, embarrassment. And I assigned a number to it. And the jury came back pretty much with our numbers.
that is a good day, a good day. And so where's the case stand now?
It's on appeal. And so we're just
What a
waiting.
surprise. They didn't just want to pay you, but interest is running, hopefully.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, it's
running.
running.
Hopefully it'll be collected one day.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully yeah, it's running, and it's definitely running, and hopefully it gets fully collected. They have enough insurance, and it's $1 billion company, so it's not that. It's just a highly technical appeal. Some crazy stuff happened on appeal, and so we're just waiting it out. We if the court follows the law, then we should win hands down, like without a doubt. I mean, I've never seen in law something so clear. Even a statute of limitations is not clear as this is. Right. So jurisdiction on appeal is something that's huge. So our position is they don't have jurisdiction. So we'll see.
All right. That's good stuff. So you've spoken at a few TLUs. The last one you were at was Huntington Beach in June. Happens to be my favorite conference of all time. Of course, I'm biased. That's like saying I got the best looking kid or the smartest kid. But what was your favorite part about? Because you've been to quite a few programs. Sadly, you missed TLU Vegas last year, but um, but many a TLU program. So, what was your favorite thing about Huntington Beach?
Besides the beach,
Well,
uh,
besides, there's a lot to be favorites about it.
you know what I actually liked is the breakfasts and the lunches, because that's where you get to really meet people and see them outside of their, like, because lawyers, when we go to conferences, we still kind of maintain our little lawyer personality, but at breakfast and lunch, you're a little bit more relaxed. So those were the best, going to breakfast and lunch and meeting the people from the boot camp, because I went to the boot camp. So
Right, because you came to the boot camp beforehand, because there was about
beforehand,
15 people at that, and that was, you know, I'm so stoked about my boot camp these days, Mohammed, because now we use this great trucking versus motorcycle versus wrongful death case.
that is a great case, because it kind of captures everything: comparative fault, big defendant, complicated fact pattern. So
There's
that
a
was
video of the crash. There's
there's a
photos from the
video
scene.
there's a video of the crash, and so that was a fun case. Joe
Yeah.
Freed's case, I believe, right?
Yep. So you're currently
Yeah,
litigating it, so that's pretty cool. And getting like using the visual of the Google map, of the scene of the highway, because it's really the most ubiquitous visual in personal injury, right? I mean, how many any truck, car, or motorcycle, bicycle crash, you're gonna have a Google map of the area to show the jury. And then, so if there's I just look at it as like there's one visual that you should become very best practices to master the use of is that Google map. Because, you know, it's just so it's in every case. And like how important is even because this case, it was a case of a north and south. He's going north. But if you put the map vertically, it's like the guy's like a rocket taking off. So even though it's north and south, everybody travels on the horizon. So that way it's better for, you know, creating space, creating the illusion of the movement, showing the jury the crash, transporting them there. And then, because a couple years ago we started teaching this defense medical expert cross, which, I think is I think is some of the best stuff we've ever done as far as like teaching the skills of cross, because that's the most critical. In fact, Mohammed, because that's one of the most, skills that to master this stuff, you got to be good at cross. If it's just about you
yeah.
putting your own witnesses up and telling your story, it don't mean shit if the other side just destroys it and you can't do anything to prevent them from destroying it. And so,
And
so
you got to
now,
cross their experts. That's the key. I mean, because the experts really fool the jury sometimes,
oh
or
yeah, but
try
just
to.
setting up the defense medical expert cross, because so many people skip foundations, for the cross. And, so obviously defense medical expert cross teaches all the foundations, the basics of leading questions only. One new fact per question. I think most people that have a law degree in practice, I think they know those things, but they usually don't do them. Like reading their transcripts, okay, they know the rules, but it's like they ask these multi-fact questions, get objected to, or cause confusion. But beyond that, like cross-examining the present tense. Very few people could do that. Very few people can imagine the story they're telling instead of just giving words. But when you do, your mind naturally creates space or create the illusion. If the truck's driving south, your hand will move and you'll glance to the side. You know, dropping the taglines like right, correct, isn't it true? And if you can't drop it, making the statement like trucker, Mo, you're driving south on US 123. true,
Yeah.
and then a little pause, so it's the jury, the audience's mind gets to process it. That pause, I think, really, makes it more memorable than, making the statement true. Then all they hear is the true. So that dropping all the filler words like and, so, etc., effectively using a flip chart. That means learning to write legibly. People write like crap on a flip chart. You know, they're less likely to use it in a courtroom if they don't have confidence in their ability to write.
So for to your point on both of those issues, so we didn't have Google Maps because it was in the middle of nowhere, the solar farm. So they don't have a Google map of it, but we used an aerial map. We literally took a drone out there and we took aerial shots. And obviously we used that, and that was in my opening. So I I might even still have the board. And then on the back of the board it was white, right? I flipped it over and I wrote 46 million on the board. But John Joyce made me practice writing 46 million like 50 times because you want to write it out properly. And you don't think about these things, but it matters.
That's why you got to
So,
practice ahead of time. Because,
so
because it matters, and if you're not confident in your writing, you're not going to use it. It's
yeah,
just the reality of it. If you don't practice using the flip chart, right? And I mean, these are just things to practice. Practice speaking more slowly. Practice being in control of your emotional state. How many people, as soon as they start cross, they start getting this angry tone, and it's like, and it's like, it's makes no sense. The
it's like
anger.
fighting. You know, when they're like, we had a game plan and then we got punched in the face. And, but if you're prepared, then even when you get punched in the face, you're going to revert to your game plan, you know. But you can see fighters. I watch a lot of UFC, and you see fighters that they're like a wrestler, and then they box for 2 rounds, they get knocked out. You're like, why did you box with him? He's like, that wasn't the game plan. The game plan was to wrestle, but then he punched me. And it's like, okay, well then, but then you see fighters like Habib, who that's all they know is wrestling, and they never stay standing up. It's always the fight always gets to wrestling. So but they're prepared, and so when the more prepared you are, the less like you are to abandon, the one fact per question, the no and I think people revert back to their bad habits when they're in trial because it's just stressful. It's a very stressful environment.
You think?
Yeah, no, I know.
You think it's a very stressful environment, but that's why, the preparation and practice is so important because very few people practice. I mean, one of the hardest things for me to do is to get people to continue to practice once they leave coming to boot camp because they do 5 days in a row, 8 hours a day. It's pretty intense. People are pretty exhausted by the end of it, but to like have the discipline, even to do 15 minutes a day. I tell people if you do 15 minutes a day of practice, not performing, people I just want to do focus groups. Well, if you're doing a focus group and you're doing it with set pieces of YD, you're doing it with a set opening, and then you're recording it and looking at it and hopefully looking at it with somebody different than yourself. You know what I mean? Somebody that may give you an outside viewpoint, maybe somebody that knows more about presenting and performing than you do, getting feedback and then making seeing if you agree with it. And if you do, making those adjustments in practice. So that way, when it's time to perform again, it's showtime, right? Like my buddy Al Thecker's got the big trial coming up in like next month in Wisconsin. He was out here a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And so he's coming out this week to do a couple of days of focus groups and just working on his case, getting those reps, getting those final parts in and stuff. So I'm pretty stoked because you got to get your reps in, you got to get your practice in. And, everybody wants to knock it out of the freaking, stadium at trial, but, finding the discipline to train and practice because, everybody's working on their cases, which they need to do. But that's why when somebody calls me like 2 weeks before trial and say, hey, man, we're going to work on, my skills. I'm like, might be a little late for to begin this, might want to get started this a few months ago because skills are something you should be developing all the time. Just constantly working on your skills.
Yeah, we were working on it with you in Vegas like 5 months, I think, before the trial.
Oh
So,
yeah, no, because you and Ray came out for a few days and
and
worked
then
on the
you came
case.
down here. We worked on it some more a couple weeks before trial, and then yeah, and then during trial, Ray and John Joyce made me do the opening like 4 or 5 times. It's so uncomfortable. You're just like, dude, let me just do it live. And like Bill O'Reilly, we do it live. And they're like, no, dude, do it here. And then even the closing, they made me do the rebuttal closing over Jason and John and Ray. And I was like a zombie by that point, right at the end of a 1 month trial. And so, but they did it, and then it showed. Like I actually delivered, probably the best rebuttal close, definitely the best closing of my life on the rebuttal. The opening closing wasn't that good, but the rebuttal closing was good, and that's because Jason, John, and Ray sat me in the living room of our Airbnb and was like, "This is what you got to do it." And I just kept doing it. I did it like 4 or 5 times. And then I was just like exhausted. I just started doing what they said just because I was exhausted.
You were ready. You
But
were
then
ready to go.
yeah.
You're ready to go. Well, Mo, I hope, in fact, that if your trial doesn't go to the end of October, you'll come out for the Eric Oliver boot camp on October 28th, because Eric is a great trial consultant. And spend about 25% of the time working with him on your cases, and the other 75% working on your performance skills and performance skills for the actual case. Because it's great now because the boot camp is 5 days, but a good portion of it's spent just working on the case, so it's legitimate case costs.
Yeah.
So that would be
and for those of you that haven't done it, it's very uncomfortable, but do the boot camps, because if you really want to do a trial, that's what trial's going to be. I mean, unless you have like just a royal flush of a trial, which even the best trial lawyers don't have. Trial is going to be stressful. Trial is going to be uncomfortable. But if you practice it, then you can walk in and be like Michael Jordan and act like it's
like Mohamad Ahmad, like he's been in the winner, you've been in the winner's circle before.
Yeah. Actually, during one of my landlord tenant trials, my client texted me during the closing. My client texted me a picture of Michael Jordan dunking. He said, "This is you. Fuck this other guy." I won that case. So
I hope so. Not like the DUI.
yeah, not like the DUI.
But you were representing the landlord, so it was a little easier.
No, I was representing the tenant in that case.
Oh, about time you went for the little guy,
And
Mo.
he owed like $400,000 in rent or something, and I got him off. Not sexually. I
It's
got him
good to
off
know. It's good to
in
know,
the
Mo. Maybe
case.
this year you'll
'Cause
make it out
that
to.
would be illegal because I didn't sign a waiver. So you got
All
to
right,
sign a
Mo.
waiver before you
If
do
you,
that with clients.
February 8th through 15th, you should put it on your calendar right now, because that'll be the 5th annual Tahoe Ski Boot Camp. And it's, 'cause I know you're a snowboarder. And so if you're not busy, that you haven't made it to one of them yet, my buddy George Machopoulos has been to, I think, 4 of them. My buddy Ike
I've been
Kaludi.
to a bunch of boot camps, but not the ski one.
No, I know. Ike Kaludi, I'm doing a webinar with him in a couple of days on this great settlement he got, but he just got like a $29.8 million verdict up in
Yeah, with
Oakland.
Mike
With,
Alder.
yeah, with Mike Alder. But
Yeah,
he
I
brought him on a
colluded, but
case.
he's
That's,
hilarious. Yeah, I've seen Ike at a bunch of TLU events.
oh yeah. No,
He's always practicing too. Yeah.
no, he was at the very first boot camp there ever was. And he's been to like 5 of them, I think, but
I
he's
think
made
that's where
great.
I met him. What was the first boot camp in your apartment in downtown
Yeah, of
LA?
course.
I
Of
went to that
course.
one.
You might have just stopped by. You weren't one of the students, though. You were eventually a student there. You were the
Yeah.
first, you were like the 3rd boot camp or the 4th boot camp. But those were the early days, Mo. We appreciate you. Some people were like, this guy, Phil
I'm
Downey,
TLU till I die, bro.
there
I
you
really.
go. I hope so. But anyways, Phil Downey was just at this last boot camp, and he was out at the ranch uh, for the summertime, because but he was here 3 years ago too.
The ranch
And
is the Jerry Spence Ranch in
the Jerry
Miami. Rest
Spence
in peace
Ranch.
to Jerry Spence, legend, the original. He's the
Yes.
OG, the OG
Yes.
of
Not the trial.
OGs.
Not the trialers college,
Yeah.
my humble the beginnings of it all. But anyways, he's like, oh, it was great. He's like, I learned so much. Da 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 da. I'm like, great. You ready to come and train? And then he came by a few weeks ago just to check it out. He's like, oh, this is a lot different than I remember. Then to hear what he's here, he's like, dude, I hated boot camp when I was here before. I didn't prepare anything, and this time I told myself I was really going to prepare. He didn't, but he made a lot of progress, and that's what it's about.
But
Making
I like
progress.
how now you break it down into like subsegments of segments.
Oh yeah, no, now it's like really focuses on really what I consider to be like
Yeah.
the 4 cornerstones of trial, which are witness prep and direct. Critical skills. We spend a whole day on that. Cross, we spend about a day. The performance skills, which are really opening and
When
closing.
is the boot camp? When is the next one? October 28th
Yes,
to 30th?
correct. Through November 1st, it's 5 days. So instead of doing TLU Vegas, we're doing really mini TLU Vegas. So there's still some spots available. So Mo, you should be there. It's going to be freaking awesome.
Yeah, if I'm not in Jerusalem, I will definitely be there.
If you're not in Jerusalem, That's it. That wasn't trial. It was Jerusalem. That was because Mo keeps it. Mo's whole family lives in Jerusalem. So
They do. My wife and
when he's
kids.
home, he's got free time, but he's gone a lot. Got a little free time. All right, Mo. It's been great visiting you.
All right.
And
Thank you, Dan the man.
look forward to seeing you soon. When's your next trial?
It's scheduled for late October, but we'll see. It's just one of those like master calendar trials. That's the problem with trials, man. You don't. I haven't. I had one trial right after the Maggio trial in Georgia to help a friend. Since then, I haven't gone. I haven't been in a trial, so it's been 2 years. 2-year drought.
Well, Mo, we got to get the rust off, buddy. Come on down to Vegas. We'll get the rust off.
Like, yeah. I've been playing baseball for the Chicago White Sox for 2 years.
I didn't even get the metaphor, but that's okay.
Michael Jordan.
Oh, Michael Jordan. Taking a little sabbatical, working on your other cross skills. I got it. I mean, your other skills for trial. I got it. All right, Mo. I look forward to seeing you soon. I don't know where it's going to be, but I know for sure I'll see you at TLU Beach, June 3rd through 6th. It's going to be better this year, buddy. We're going to do a couple of dinner buyouts of the restaurant, the hotel. So that connection stuff, because, I work on my whole connection, my whole socializing stuff. So besides the great content, the great 4 lecture tracks, 8 workshop tracks. I was real proud of last year, but we're going to outdo it this year. That's all I can say, Mo. And you're going to have another verdict to talk about.
Watching the stuff on the TLU On Demand.
Keep learning, Mo.
Just keep background. Just put it on in the background. Learn stuff.
No. Focus on it, Mo. All right.
Focus.
Yep. And if anybody doesn't have TLU On Demand, hit me up. And if you don't have it, I'll shoot you a code for a free complimentary trial because it's a app for your phone. You get all pleadings, transcripts, and PowerPoints. It's really, I think it's a pretty great resource, but I am biased. So that's it, Mo.
All right.
Ready to train with the Titans and set records with your verdicts? Register for our live conferences and boot camps at triallawyersuniversity.com. Start getting your reps in before the big event by going to tluondemand.com to gain instant access to live lectures, case analysis, and skills training videos from the trial lawyer champions you love and respect, as well as pleadings, transcripts, PowerPoints, and notes for a roadmap to victory. Join the group that continues to get extraordinary results. Trial Lawyers University, produced and powered by LawPods.